Well, hello everyone. Welcome to week 8 of the Formula G show. I am Zotomo, and I'm joined as always by Calamity. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, Singapore, a very small little city-state in the Pacific, offering its own unique challenges, or lack of, maybe. We'll see as we get into this thing. Yeah, but Calamity, how did you enjoy Singapore?
So. You'll see why in a bit. Just one question: is Singapore in the Pacific? I'm not really
Oh, it
sure
is.
about that.
It is. I mean, there's technically only one ocean, so if you want to get really specific,
Okay.
I mean, it's in the ocean, but it's. I mean, I've always thought of it as being in the Pacific Ocean. Is it like what are we gonna say, Indian Ocean or?
I don't know. I'm not sure. For me, like the Pacific Ocean starts like east of the Philippines.
Okay. Well, I guess on Google Maps, Singapore technically sits in the Java Sea, in the South China or the South China Sea, depending on how you zoom in on it. Maybe it's in the Indian Ocean if you get really specific.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Enough of that.
I think it would be a good border, maybe.
Yeah.
Those Indonesian islands separate. That's where I think of, like west of Indonesia. I think Indian Ocean, but
Mm.
yeah, but it is all one ocean anyways. So we're splitting hairs to begin with. But anyway, let's jump into those locations before we waste any more of your time here. Round one, Calamity. Kind of at a meeting place of two different bridges, which was a little bit confusing.
But as we've had previously sprint races or something like that where complaints were that we didn't get to see a lot of the city. In Singapore, we probably didn't get to see a lot of the city either, but not because the locations were bad, but because you barely have to move to know where you are for most of these.
Yeah.
Here we started, yeah, as you said, right east of a bridge over a river. You had street signs here everywhere. And we were probably, not the most central, but still pretty central to where it says Singapore on the map. That's actually not that close to the center of Singapore. But yeah, a relatively easy location where I don't think most people had many problems with that.
I think pretty much two people didn't get 5K, but other than that, the whole field was able to 5K the location. So what was a little bit tricky here was that on the map, it looks like a pretty significant river is running right next to the road, but there is a bit of foliage kind of blocking a little bit of it, kind of like we had last week in Italy, where the actual location didn't look quite like it should on the map. Maybe we thought it did. So I didn't move, but I spent a lot of time spinning around in circles trying to figure out exactly the orientation and everything for it. But it is worth mentioning that a lot of the roads in Singapore have as part of their name the district that they're in. So if you just look at a road sign, like I think in this case we had Seng Kong, you just look at Singapore and you see, oh, there's the Seng Kong district. Zoom in, find the actual road. Oh, okay, here's an intersection that looks right. You're done.
Yeah, and
in some of them anyways.
In case you don't know if what you're looking at on the road sign is actually a district or not, move to a different road, see if the name's still the same. If it is, then it's probably a district.
Yeah. And lots of numbers with those district names is how they kind of seem to have a naming scheme going for them. Round two, just a skip and a hop from location number one.
Yep, and sort of a bit of a more, I mean, like 99% of Singapore is suburban, but this actually looks like it as well. We actually spawned on a little side road that doesn't really look like cars are supposed to drive on it, but they are doing it anyways. And yeah, again, you've moved a bit, you found names of the roads that signify the district that we're in, and then you looked for it on the map. That's it pretty much. And in this case, you also had two buildings to your south that made it relatively easy to pinpoint as well.
Yeah, I think for me, what threw me off for a little bit was that I didn't realize it was two buildings because how I was jumping a couple of steps along that road, I was missing the actual gap in the building. And so I'm like, oh, this is one huge building. Wait a minute. Is it this building or this building? And then I realized, oh, there's a gap. We're right there. So,
Yep.
yeah. But again, just a little bit of moving around did give you some, again, street names, which gave you districts. And then zooming in for that, you're able to find those pretty straightforward. Round 3 saw us move a little bit south, not far from one of the big, is it like a national park or just a big green area in the city?
Not really sure. A nature reserve, I think.
Yeah, something like that. For round 3 anyways.
Yeah. And I had a few problems with that one, which is why I already claim the spot of that in our feature race coverage, because I think I solved my problems quite interestingly. Because I first walked west, and both the road that we started on and the highway to the west aren't named after districts. So it took me quite a while to figure out how to find out where the hell we are. But I did in the end. And again, it wasn't difficult in my opinion to pinpoint, but we did see Simi, I know, and a couple more people messed up the pinpointing there. There was another side street a bit to the west that looked similar. And yeah, if you ran out of time or were a bit too overconfident with that, quite a few people had to give up their hope for points there.
I see. Yeah, it was a bit tricky. The kind of, I guess, hint is that if it's not a district name, there are very few roads, and they tend to be major ones.
Yes.
There's a couple like named after people, I believe, major highways and whatnot in Singapore. And so you kind of zoom out on the map, look at some of those bigger roads, and then I use that to zoom my way in. But what was a bit confusing for me was that if you actually zoom in on the location, the road name changes several times, very close to it, in that area. So I was like, wait a minute, I'm seeing like 3 different names, and I had to like, okay, this is actually the road I'm on and all that. So that was a little bit weird. Yeah, but we were almost at like a weird like 5-way junction or something like that. We were at an intersection to an on-ramp or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was really weird location, but you had to think about it a little bit carefully, but was still 5Kable for a majority of the field. So into round 4, way south in the beautiful, probably the nicer suburbs of Singapore.
Yes, on the island of Sentosa. Not something I'd seen in the 2 practice rounds I played, obviously. But yeah, I was a bit confused at first because, as I've said, it's a bit unusual. Something I feel like looks quite similar to a place in GTA 5. But once you moved out a bit and realized that you're pretty close to the ocean, probably, it became pretty easy to figure out, well, look at the map of Singapore. Where could this be? Well, the island of Sentosa. Where else would it be? So, yeah, and we spawned on one of those 2 little islands next to a roundabout that make pinpointing very, very easy.
Yeah, several roundabouts. For me, when I moved a little bit off the little island, there is a very big resort. And of course, all the names for everything are like ocean related. So you immediately just start scanning the coastline, looking for something. And then I found the point of interest. I was like, oh, there's the hotel. Work your way back. And it was pretty obvious from there where you were.
Was it the Cape Royale for you as well, or was it something different?
Yes. Yeah,
okay,
the Cape Royale.
It was the same for me.
Yeah, you basically get off the island, go to the nearest roundabout, and then there's a huge hotel, and you're like, okay, there it is.
Oh yeah,
So-
the next street over was also called Ocean Drive, which helped make clear where we are.
Yeah. What was it? Cove, Sandy Island, Ocean. Yeah, so lots of aquatic themed things so to help you out with that. But yeah, very beautiful location.
Yeah, there's
so-
even a little side street here called Treasure Island.
Yeah, if you needed any more help. Yeah, and then 5 saw us just catapult across to the complete opposite side of the city.
Yeah, this was the make or break it round for like most of the fields. It was again similarly to all the other rounds. I think I didn't take longer than a minute 45 for any of the other 4 rounds, and it didn't take me longer to figure out which road we're on here either. But there was nothing much to help you pinpointing here. You could get onto the side road and then you can see where the gaps in the buildings were, but it was still pretty difficult to figure out where exactly you started because you were like 4 roads over to the other side. And you didn't quite start at one of those gaps, but somewhere in front of a building next to the gaps. So a lot of people, if they did, dropped their points here.
Yeah, just the nature of the location was you didn't have any really distinctive landmarks to use to help you pinpoint your location. I had to resort to the clicking, the proportionality away from the 2 small roads that go off this main road. I literally clicked, okay, we're almost dead center. It was like 7 or 8 clicks from both, something like that. And so I'm like, well, I just put us in the middle, and that was good enough. So, yeah, a bit tricky indeed for those. So yeah, as you can expect, a lot of 25Ks, perfect games, as we'll get into that later in the results screen. But first, let us jump to the sprint race locations, which were a completely different set of stories, Calamity, from the feature race. So yeah, can you give us a bit of a rundown on those?
Yeah,
as you had them.
We started off in I don't even know, probably not a national park. No, it's called the Telok Blangah Hill Park, on a sort of a walkway above the ground, where you first off had to figure out how to get out of that park. I went east, and sort of after about a minute or so, I managed to get out of there. And then my next problem was that the roads outside of the park are still just major roads that are named after people and not roads that tell you which district you're in. Until I found a sign that pointed me towards the Jalan Bukit Merah road, which is named after the district it's in. And I actually rewatched my sprint race locations. I obviously didn't practice quite enough, but I didn't remember for some reason that Bukit Merah was a district. And it's right dead center of my screen at about 1.5 minutes in, and I didn't see it. And it took me until like 4 or 3 seconds to the end until I saw it. And then I frantically tried to click my way to that park. And in the end, I was missing like 1 second to get there, which was unfortunate, but still better than if I hadn't found it at all.
Yeah, I mean, that location was like, we were a trekker, so not even on a normal road, and it was tricky to get out. And I just saw this big park, and I saw signs about monkeys and animals, and I was like, well, there's this huge nature reserve in the middle of the city. Maybe we're somewhere in there. I spent, I tend to waste my time a bit reading signs too much. And I just guessed up in one of those areas, kind of hedging my bet, and I was like, oh no, we're way south. Oops. So yeah, so much for that. I think that was my first location as well. So it was like, ooh, yay, really well done on the feature race, and then complete disaster in the sprint race on the first guess. So kind of soured my mood quite a bit.
I still think it could have easily been 5K'd if I had found Bukit Merah on my first time seeing it. But we've not seen that. And well, obviously, depending on your time limit, I had 2.5 minutes, so I had more than enough time. I guess with like a minute less, you'd struggle a lot to even make your way there.
Round 2 for you, Calamity?
Yes, round 2 was near the ocean again, just this time not down in Sentosa, but on the other side, sort of to the northeast, right next to the airport. Which I did see a sign for, which helped a lot. And there were also, it was relatively easy to pinpoint with some of the parking lots and the bus stops. That made it relatively easy for, I assume, most people.
Yeah. I mean, I was really close. I didn't get 5K on it. The problem was I saw a couple point of interest and I couldn't find them on the map. And so I was like, wait a minute, am I really here? Because none of these what seemed to be major things, like there was a ferry dock, I guess, that wasn't there, and wasn't labeled at least. So I was like, well, you can see the airport to your south, and I was like, well, this has to be the area. And then I just ran out of time and wasn't able to actually get the 5K, but a bit of a weird location for that. But yeah, so location 3 for you.
Now we started getting into the center of Singapore. In round 3, we started between two major hotels, the Marriott and the Raffles in Singapore. And we started on Beach Road, which not that close to the beach, but okay. And I walked a bit towards the north and eventually found the intersection between Beach Road and Ophir Road, and that stood out enough on the map for me to find it relatively easily. And also just based on the fact that, well, we were obviously somewhere in the city center, which means I didn't even take the full 2.5 minutes for that one.
Yeah, I wasn't able to find it at all. I mean, you're sort of downtown near the coast, so I was along the beach edge, and I just kind of ran out of time and was like, well, I didn't realize it was downtown.
Yeah.
So that hurt a little bit for that. But round 4 for you, if I'm not mistaken, is a pretty good one.
Yeah, right next door, pretty much, like 2 streets over on the Formula 1 track, which I immediately recognized, but the area looks a bit weird. It looks different than it does on the map. Well, the thing is, there is a line marked for the Formula 1 circuit, but it's in green. It's one of those lines that you'd see in a park, for example, for like a footpath. And I'm only realizing this now. I didn't even realize that this was the case until, well, I didn't even realize that after looking at the location in the map, after I'd guessed. So I had to sort of rely on the buildings that were to our west, as well as the distance to the next street to the north. And I guessed at the wrong building because there were apparently 2 buildings to our west, and I went with the northern one, and there was another one to the south of it. So I lost 100 points there.
Yeah, I mean, it was on the track. Actually, if you went a little bit, I believe, to the east, you did actually switch coverage. And so you got to see the grandstands and all the cars all the stuff set up for the race instead.
We're pretty much
which is pretty cool.
In turn 3 of Singapore.
Yeah. What was really interesting for me is that same as you, not 3-4, but I had this location after the last one. And so missing that one, I knew where to look for this one. Okay. Because they were so close. I saw some similar names of roads in the distance, and I was like, okay, I know where this stuff is. And I looked where we had just been, and it helped me do really well on that one. So
yeah, that would have probably that would have probably helped you more if it were the opposite way around, because you probably could have found the Formula 1 track anyway, and then you would have recognized the street names for the other round.
Yeah, and round 5 was another tricker. So.
Yep. Round 5 was in the Dairy Farm Nature Park. I tried to get out of the little sort of spawn location by sort of clicking into the distance. Didn't work. I tried to walk a bit either direction, and it looked completely hopeless to get somewhere. So I didn't even bother and tried looking for the Dairy Farm Nature Park on the map and didn't find it.
Enough said.
Yep.
This is another time where my really bad guess in round 1 paid off, because I had scoured that park looking for the names I was seeing in the other park. And so when I saw it, I go, oh, I know where this is, because I had just spent 2 minutes looking in the wrong place. So yeah, I was able to really pinpoint it. I had plenty of time on this one because my mistake paid off dividends later on when I was actually looking in the right place. So and once you do know where you are, it's easy to find the bathroom and parking lot. You're right outside, and 5K it. But like again, I think the order helped me a lot. Like if I hadn't done poorly in the first round or had them in a different order, maybe I wouldn't have known where to look. But that was just a bit of providence on for me.
My main issue with that was that I expected the whole thing to be called the Dairy Farm Nature Park and not just one POI somewhere. Like if you zoom in. So I was looking at all the different parks in Singapore and just none of them were called that. So yeah, couldn't find it.
Yeah, but very interesting. 2 trekker locations, which provided something very different from the feature race, because there are lots of these nature reserves and interesting locations in Singapore, and they offer a very different challenge than just, oh, this is the district road name, find district, zoom in, get 5K. So I definitely would give props to Ben for trying to throw us a little bit of something different here in the sprint race. It's very frustrating as a driver, of course, because you don't get the 5K. But it was a good change of pace from the feature race, for sure.
You can get the 5K if you find the location. They were definitely both pinpointable. I mean,
I did pinpoint one of them, but I mean, out of all 5 locations, pinpointing everything would have been quite a bit of a challenge, especially with the shorter time limits.
Definitely.
So, yeah, it was good. It was a good experience overall. Better than Italy last week, I'll say that much. So
it wasn't that difficult.
Especially since I had more time. So that was the big thing, I think, for that. But yeah, let's take a look at how the competitors did in the feature race and sprint race. First with that feature race, and as you can see, super competitive. The top 8 drivers all getting a perfect score, and Calamity just outside of that top with that one bad round at the end there, puts him at 9th. Closed doing a very similar thing there, perfect all the way till the very end, and I assume Deep Thought as well.
Yeah, Deep Thought
missing out.
Deep Thought had his mistake in round 4.
Okay, but just one mistake, correct? Yeah. So pretty much, I think even in the top maybe 12 or 13, they're probably making only one mistake on one round. And costing them all those points. So it came down to distance this week. Giovanni Stimfalix there, only 25 meters off in total. Berryfish Bear, the furthest out of the 25K, 44 meters out, and everybody else somewhere in between. Notably, Wakelock returning to form. We haven't seen him up in the standings for a few weeks, doing quite well for him. Mr. Blue continuing his run of form, staying up there. And me, in 7th. Look at that. Picking up my first points. I only got 4, though. So I knew it was going to come down to distance, but I was just happy to get the 25K, to be honest. I didn't make any silly mistakes, so happy with myself there. Probably big disappointments for people like Shumio Belozo, Sir Lemons, and M. the Baseman. They weren't just a little bit off. They were quite a few 100,000
100,000 points off.
Yeah, I was gonna say 100 points off, but they were more than over a couple thousand. So talking. But Simi also not in that perfect score, which is a bit of a surprise for him. So anything from you here, Calamity?
Woohoo! 2 points. Congratulations on your first points.
Oh, thank you.
Other than that, kind of similar. Jack. Back to form. I think he's been kind of absent in the last couple races, if I remember correctly. At least hasn't shown up on the podium, I think. And if he has, then I've forgotten it.
No, he hasn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Just out of it or way off.
Yeah. Kind of a disappointment for once for Oberhausen with 1 point. That probably hasn't happened in a while, if ever. And as you said, M. the Baseman, he's struggled in Geoguessr generally, he's said before in recent times. So we'll hope that he improves in the near future, if not in results, then at least in self-confidence, because people might not be aware of that, but Geoguessr is very self-confidence dependent. You'll definitely play a lot better if you're confident in what you're doing. Yeah, also for Scanström, the French duo, no points in the feature race this time. So a bit of a disappointment for them.
Yeah, you definitely had to be on your game for this one. So yeah, I was not trying to get distance or speed. I was just trying to get 25k, and I did get that. It is worth noting, Max Fi in 6th was the fastest, even though he was 40 meters off. So he did get those 5 bonus points. We'll see in a bit that helped him in the standings. But let's jump over to those sprint race results. And unfortunately, unfortunately for us, Oberhausen did pick up some points today in the sprint race, with Closed making up for his bad performance in the feature race, doing quite well, picking up 3rd here in the sprint race. Mr. Blue taking 1st. This is the first double first place anybody's ever gotten. So he has gotten 1st place in the sprint race back to back. So no one has managed to be in P1 back to back in either the feature race or the sprint race. So quite an achievement for him, especially because he has been working with some of the shortest times in the sprint race. So he's kind of a double prize for him there.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that he started 9th. So he wasn't, having the very shortest time, but he was still going into it with a relatively short time limit.
Yeah. Tall and Paulo, though, did pick up some points here after missing out on the feature race. Berryfish Bear staying 8th in both standings, so he'll pick up a few points for Chariot there as well. I unfortunately did not do very well on this one with 2 very bad guesses, so I dropped further down, and the basement stays down. I don't know what happened to Giovanni. Maybe just forgot about the sprint race.
Maybe didn't have the time to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. His very good performance in the feature race unfortunately did not carry over for that. But Clem, I think you were almost dead center for both of them as well.
Woohoo! 1 point. So. Yeah, it could have been a lot better. If I just found that nature park in round 5, I would have been 4th. But alas, didn't happen. 1 more point for me. At least I've been consistent, I guess. Consistently picking up very little points in the last few weeks. Yeah.
Can't ask for much more.
Also interesting to see there. Actually, quite a few people on sort of opposite sides of the results table from feature race and sprint race here again. You down in 70th, Steel the Snick. I can't quite remember. Was he like 2nd in the feature race? I think so. Now down in 16th.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Yeah, Max from 6th to 12th. Other way around works as well. Redirect getting some points. I think didn't this happen last week as well, where he didn't really do well in the feature race, but then picked up a lot of points in the sprint race. I think I mentioned something like that.
And he hasn't even been playing the sprint races all season. Like he missed the first 5 sprint races.
Yeah, I think he started playing them last week. Yeah.
So yeah. I think a lot of that flip-flopping has to do a little bit with the time differences. Like if you do really well in the feature race, you get really a short time for the sprint race. So you know some of these scores are still pretty good by people like Max and Simi, but they're not going to be as good as someone who's got an extra minute, especially when it's as fierce a competition as Formula G is for that. But yeah, we did mention how much harder the sprint race locations were, and it does show itself here. Nobody getting a perfect score. Mr. Blue winning, but still about 267 points off. There we go.
66.
66. I always go the wrong way. Math. Well, that's the sprint race standings. Let's see what this means for the drivers overall. And Calamity, Mr. Blue has finally knocked Close off the podium. Close sitting at 1st place for almost I think since week 2.
A long time, yeah.
Yeah, a very long time. But very good performances and back-to-back wins in the sprint race from Mr. Blue sees him not only pass Close, but really jump. 18-point lead on Close now. Jack not too far behind him either, so Close could definitely see him slip even further down if he's not careful. Tom Paul and Max Fi round out the top 5. Yeah, other than that, pretty much a few minor shuffles in the middle. I move out of last place with my 4 points there, overtaking Slovak goalie. So I've already achieved my goal for the last 4 races of the season by not being last and picking up some points at all. But yes, again, as we mentioned last week, definitely a few packs starting to form here as we get into the final last 2 races, Calamity.
Yeah, there's 110 points still on the table. So we can now officially say everyone that's behind 13th has no longer got a chance to win it. Apart from, I would say realistically, if you're not in the top 7 at this point, you're not going to win it anymore. And that also means that Simi, having the bad week that he did, sort of reverted his charge up the top from last week. And he's now back 68 points behind Mr. Blue, which, yeah, as I've said before, you're unlikely to make that much up in 2 races. Yeah, apart from that, I still think top 7, everything can happen. Obviously, with how this week has gone, Mr. Blue is the favorite. And he lives in Bulgaria, so I assume he can read Cyrillic relatively well, which should help him for Russia. That's coming up. So maybe he's even going to do well there.
Yeah. It isn't worth mentioning that next week is Russia, and we'll get to that map in a bit. But other than that, there's not much there's a lot of points. Let's put it that way. But it's going to be very hard to make up ground.
Yeah.
Because even if you say or anybody picks up those points, you have to have the other drivers lose out on a lot of points. And in the last couple of weeks, what we've been seeing is while there's been shuffling at the top, it's always the same people. Right? It's always people like Mr. Blue, Close, Talampala, Jack, are always in that race, even if they're not in the same position week to week. So yes, you get 10, 15 points on somebody this week, but then they do really well in the sprint race or something like that. So, I think the trajectory of those points is going to pretty much stay consistent, and it's going to be probably the top, depending on how Steal This Nick does. He's kind of up and down, same with Giovanni. But that 6th, 7th, 8th position is really going to be if these guys can be consistent in 2 races, not just 1. And then it's pretty much between the top 5 here and how they finish out the next 2 weeks for that. But of course, with the Constructor Challenge, there is still plenty to play for, even for some of the other drivers, to help their teammates and boost their team standing in the Constructor race. While Closed has been knocked off the top position in the Driver Cup, Oberhausen still holds that top spot in the Constructor Challenge because of his long run of form. But Katsuravatsa is closing in slightly with Mr. Blue's good run of form, sees them move up above Scanstrom. Other than that, just pretty much a bit of flip-flopping between a few positions. Lancaster, Octane, Bamberg, and Nordhagen week to week rotate in those next couple positions, while Chariot, FGT, and Opava haven't moved while they have gained points. They just relative to each other running at those bottom 3. So, for this, though, Calamity, pretty much, I would say down to the top 3 for this.
I mean, if you're going to say down to the top, I would say either include like top 5 or say it's over. Kind of like... There's it's 43 points that is doable to catch up, but Simi and Closed haven't really messed up like a whole race weekend before, and even in this week where only Closed got a good result in only the sprint race, they're still 40 points ahead. So it would require an insanely good finish to the season by one of the teams below them to mount a last-second challenge to topple them off the first place. But I think they're probably going to win it.
Yeah, the only person I would give a shot is Katsuravatsa because Mr. Blue could probably pull it out. The thing is, like you said, Closed and Simi together have worked really well in terms of picking up points. And for the last couple of weeks, it's pretty much been Mr. Blue getting everything for Katsuravatsa. He would need M the Basement in the last 2 weeks to like be like second and third with him to really put up a challenge.
Yeah.
But I don't see that happening. Scantrum has a good pair, but they're not a pair that could really put themselves in a podium position week to week. They're Tall Impala and Orpheus are always in that 4 to 7, 8 position, which with that point drop off isn't going to pick them up enough to overcome that point difference. So while they have a better pair, the pair is further down in the rankings than the individual of Mr. Blue and Katsuravatsa. But I think pretty much the bottom 3 are going to stay the bottom 3. Yes. I don't think Chariot, we're the closest we can make up 60 points. If they can't make up 40, we're not going to make up 60.
Nope.
Let's put it that way. So the middle of the pack is pretty much going to be a bit of shuffling here and there in the next week or two. But kind of those top couple and the bottom 3 are going to stay the way they are. So looking forward to next season and what we can do there for them, maybe planning some strategies for that. Yeah. Well, let's wrap this up by taking a look at the map we'll be playing in week 9. It is Russia.
Yep, certainly going to be interesting. I don't know if there are still people who in the Geoguessr community who can't read Cyrillic at all. I know a lot of them sort of can recognize at least city names, and maybe if they've got the time, which they do if they find the sign early enough, they can, transliterate with help of the map. But yeah, I think it'll depend. It can, depending on the location, depend a lot on which direction you go. So it might just end up being very luck-based. Rural Russian roads tend to have signs in a sort of regularity. Like, it's not uncommon to find a sign, but if you walk the wrong way and you spawn in an unfortunate location, you might well just not see anything in 5 minutes.
And even if you see a sign, is it going to be a helpful sign?
Yeah.
That's something that isn't a super small dirt road or you can't even find on the map. So yeah, that's the bigger challenge.
Yeah,
right
I'm
there
sort of when I was saying that, I was ignoring signs that tell you this little village is 2 kilometers that way, because that you're not gonna find them. But yeah, Russia is actually relatively diverse based on landscape. So if you know a bit of that as well, that might help you out.
Yeah, definitely worth brushing up on your geography for the Russia map. As you can see, Russia is not the most popular country or map in the Geoguessr community. Average score of 18,512. It's only been played 414 times and 26 likes. So it's not a go-to country for a lot of these competitors, which could make it very interesting because it could really throw the field open that it could be that, those big players go the wrong way and some of those mid-table drivers go the right way. And, it's definitely the most open of them. Is it going to really shuffle things up? Probably not, but, you've always got that probability aspect to it here. So, and any thoughts on Sochi as a sprint race location?
Yes, Sochi is going to be very interesting. I quite like the city in and of itself. I like how it looks, but I'm also going to have to ask Ben, or if he probably will watch this, to mention in the comments what exactly the edges of the map are, because it's a bit complicated. I don't know if you're aware, but the actual race circuit, Formula 1 circuit of Sochi, as well as the Olympic Stadium and everything, isn't in Sochi. It's down in Adler, which is like 30-40 kilometers down in the southeast, which is technically part of Sochi, but not of the city, sort of.
I see.
And Ben's already said that he's not going to include locations down in Adler. But still, it's very hard to tell where exactly the city limits are otherwise. So I'd like to know that. And yeah, apart from that, it's a Russian city. It's certainly not going to be easy. I've also just in the last minute or two, I've been looking around Street View in Sochi, and I haven't found a road sign that tells you a name yet. So,
joy.
well,
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that all the Olympic stuff was way south. I thought it was in the southern tip, but I didn't realize it was like completely down in a different municipality, so to speak. So
25 kilometers southeast. Yeah.
If you do go to Google, like if you type in Sochi, it gives you the outline of the municipality in red. If you not like just hover over Sochi, so you can kind of see that as a rough guess of where the outline of the city might be, but it is very spread out. It might be bigger than Singapore. I don't know. It'd be worth comparing if you have the time.
I don't think it is actually. Singapore is really big. Let me actually look it
I'm just
up.
always deceived by Google Maps.
Yeah, Singapore is 728 square kilometers. Can I look up? Sochi is
I guess Singapore is
250.
big.
So yeah, Singapore is almost triple the size.
Okay.
But yeah,
I also get deceived by how big Singapore is. So
it's also Singapore, like especially downtown Singapore and everything, is a lot more dense than Sochi. So you might be able to tell sort of where you are based on the way the road layout looks.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, just skimming through the map here, I'm definitely thinking that Sochi is going to be a point of interest map rather than a road sign map, because Russia is not famous for being well labeled.
Yep.
But those big shopping malls and monuments and parks do still tend to be labeled in Russia, as well as those big highways and such. So those might be something we can try to use next week. So. But yeah, brush up on your Cyrillic at least a little bit, and we'll see you all then. Take care.
Bye.